Okay, thank you. So POI, my POI preference is true. You can unmute yourself. Okay, so I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. We do think that bullying is a serious yet always underestimated case by many people. Victims of bullying do not have any access to justice. Is because the people of society, a lot of times they underestimate the case of bullying. Even if legal authority exists, even if, for example, they can report the case to the police, we don't think that is enough because in the first place, legal law cannot criminalize underage children, right? These these children who did bullies to another children. And also we do think that the idea to underestimate bullies exists, like, oh, it is just a children thing to do, like saying things like that, right? So our stance as opening government team is that we want to give the school the authority to process the bullying case outside of the school. What kind of process? uh, we would like to give the school the right to determine whether who is at fault and who is not, and to investigate the process. So that under our world, investigation process is still going to be exist. What kind of investigation? What kind of investigation? For example, schools have the access to their own CCTV, for example, and and if the bullying happened outside of a school, we are going to give the school the right to access any CCTV cameras outside of the school, for example. Right? This can be done by, for example, the person of the for example,
POI.
half of the school going to the buildings where the bullying case happened. But before that, yes.
Prove to us how school is contingent towards managing bullying even if like delinquent prisons already exist in the current status quo.
Okay, I will explain that later on my first argument, like why school has the right and has the obligation to intervene the case, right? Okay, back to my setup. We do think that this is important because most of bullying case happen outside of the school, at the very first place, right? Most bullies did their action outside of the schools, right? Because inside of school, they are also scared to do the bully, right? Because there are many people, there their teachers exist inside of the school. The person who they bully, the friends of the person who they bully also exist inside of the school. Therefore most bullies decided to do their action outside of the school, right? So if schools only meant to only process inside of the school bullies, we do think that it is useless because most of the case happen outside of the school. It's almost like the school securities are not working at all. Okay, so I have two principal arguments. First is that why school has the right to intervene. Secondly, why we should teach children to be liable by giving schools the right? Okay. Firstly, my first argument, why school has the right, has to take the right to intervene. We think that because the idea of alternatives that are not working in the status quo. For example, if I want to report my case to the police, sometimes they underestimate the bullying process and even normalize the bullying case, right? For example, why? Because it has been inside of their blood. If you were entering a government school affiliated institution like STAN, IPDN, ABRI, etc., bullying case from seniors to their juniors is very normalized. Therefore, the whole police institution, the whole governmental institution are accustomed to the process of bullying. Therefore, the governmental institution that's supposed to give them justice are not doing their work because they think that, oh, it is normal. I have experienced things like that. It is normal for you to have that kind of experience, right? Secondly, we do think that not every parents are responsible to their children. If parents cannot be responsible to their children, therefore it is schools who have to take the responsibility responsible to their students, right? Because parents have paid their tax, that this kind of tax have schools have been paid to, you know, to take that kind of responsibility, right? Three, we think that it should be schools who are liable for their students' behavior. Why? Because schools is where students are supposed to learn. What the action of students is, the actions of students is because is the result of what schools have told to their students, right? For also, we think that schools have the responsibility to intervene because, for example, in economic market, when supplies and demands fails, government has the obligation to intervene and to solve the problem. Same principle applies in school. If their students fall into issues, if their students fall into problems, schools has the right, schools have the obligation to intervene because it is happening inside of their area, right? So yeah, therefore we think that students have to take the right to intervene. Secondly, my second argument, why we think that same concepts applies in adulthood. Therefore, we should teach this to the current students, right? For example, in working field, it is obligated for a member to hold members of an institution liable for their institutional reputation. Therefore, because in working field, every worker is liable for their company's reputation. Yeah, so therefore, if we want to teach children this kind of important life lesson, we should teach them when they are still students. Teach them to hold the reputation of the schools, right? Because they are liable for because these kind of students have consented to enter the school, therefore they have the obligation to hold, and they are liable to hold their institutional reputation, which is their school, right? Therefore, school have the rights and obligation to intervene. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that fine speech. Now, to open the case from opposition, I would like to call leader of opposition.
Okay, so I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. So first, I would like to rebuttal some of the opinions of the previous side. First, we have to consider that school is not a law institution, and there is no rule that said that school can interrupt other people's life. And if school has to check a CCTV anywhere and everywhere the kids appear, so our kids have no right as a human being to live their life freely. Every place outside of school is not the territory of school to interrupt every kid's life. And even though you may say that there is a possibility that their parents that really you know like don't really care about their kids, but it's not school rights to interrupt it, but it's our government responsibility to take care of it. So I would like to build my arguments. First, if some school punish students for their behavior outside of the school, because it's none of, we have to consider that it's none of their business. And school, if school has to interrupt every behavior of student outside the school, then it will be totally said that there is no freedom here. That's such a very disrespectful for their parents if school has to punish and interrupt their kids because it's their parents' business. Also, we have to consider that it's out of school jurisdiction, because when a student leaves the school ground, then the school has no right to interfere with other people's personal life as long as it doesn't affect the school directly or indirectly. Because, for example, the student doesn't wear any of school uniforms, then what's actually going to affect the school? How could we even identify them as a student? And there's no there's no possibility that the school is going to affect of their behavior. I thought that's.
Thank you very much for that fine speech.
Yeah, starting my speech.
Okay, don't
And-
forget to open your camera.
Oh yeah, wait a minute.
And please state your preferred method of POI.
My POI preference is through unmuting. So if you would like to do a POI, please unmute yourself. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. One very big question for opposition. They never explain why then it's justifiable to limit the school's capability in punishing its own students, because the fact that my first speaker has already explained to you why then students at the end of the day will have the obligation to keep the school's reputation. That's one big question for opposition. But then my team is going to prove to you why then we should not limit the school's capability, because we believe the school's capability in punishing its own students, because we believe that at the end of the day that it's going to create a difference effect that we will I will explain later on my argument. Two rebuttals for the opposition team. Number one, opposition keeps talking about how that schools there's no rule that able the schools to actually intervene in the students' life. But we think that this is wrong, right? Because the fact that right now schools has been intervening so much of the students' life, like for example, in the form of opening gate to opportunities for the students, like for example, it enables the student to join in many competitions, that it enables the student to be a math Olympian, and any other opportunities, like for example, also shaping one's character. So the burden of opposition is that to explain why then we should limit to what extent schools can intervene in students' life. That is something that is missing from opposition, and if opposition cannot explain of that limitations that the schools must have, then they should not win the debate. But number two, opposition keeps talking about how it is out of the school's jurisdiction anyway if the bullying happens out of school. But number one, we have proved to you why students have the obligation to keep the school's reputation, because imagine if this famous school, for example, has a bullying case, even if it happens outside of the school, but what people will highlight the moment when bullying happens is that, for example, they will highlight what kind of family background that the student has. But number two, they will also highlight from what kind of education that this student is coming from what kind of schools, for example, that these students are coming from. And this kind of bad reputation will always attach to the schools at the end of the day, and it will affect the schools entirely. Like for example, all the students coming from the schools will be seen as bad students because of this one bullying case, and etc. And this is why it's very important for students to also have the obligation to keep the school's reputation. But number two, we also think that this is to create the sense of responsibility as a student, and this is a sense of learning, ladies and gentlemen. And we think that at the end of the day, punishment is also a form of education that I will prove also later on my argument. But number three, we think that opposition is also missing on explaining why jurisdiction is justifiable to limit schools. Therefore, you should not count this argument coming from opposition talking about jurisdiction, and etc. Number one, I'm going to prove to you why schools have the capability to actually give a deterrence effect for the students, and therefore it's going to decrease like the likelihood of bullying and etc. Number one, we think that schools has the capability because schools are able to give direct penalty for the students. Like for example, the students who do bullying outside of the schools can also being banned from certain activities. The students cannot be students councils. Schools the students cannot be part of the students council and etc. But why then it's different coming from opposition? We are aware that even though like there is no the obligation of punishment that the schools must do to bullying under opposition, but what is different is that under opposition, when the school's rights to actually punish the students are limited, it means that the schools will not be aware in any kinds of bullying that the students will happen outside of the school. But if we do not limit the rights of the schools, it will create a sense of responsibility for the schools to protect their students, to also be responsible of the students' actions, even if that is done outside of the school. And we think that schools are very important places for students. Like for example, this school is a place for students to build their futures, because for example, it opens many opportunities to students, like enriching their experience, enriching their CV, soft skills, and many more. So if schools are able to punish these students, it means that most likely students will be more afraid, because they are afraid like they will not have a bright future, because their name in their school has been really bad, that they are seen as a bad student by the teachers and etc. But number two, the reason why school has the capability, because school has a counseling teachers anyway. This is as a form of facility that the schools provide to its students, right? And this note that these teachers are obligated to have a psychology education before being a counseling teacher. And this is it means that they are able to read the children's emotions, they are able to understand the children's emotions. And okay, like opposition might say that there's going to be parents or families at home that can also punish these children, that can also educate these children. But note that not every children has this kind of privilege, right? Like why? Because maybe like their parents just don't they just don't care. Like their home has a very bad environment where their parents barely go home and etc. But number B, these children might live in a very bad surrounding. There's no good example for them, and this is why school is a very important part of their life, where it is the only form of them to actually gain a good education, to actually shape their attitudes and etc. Why then punishing is a form of education at the end of the day? Two reasons. Because A, from this punishment of schools, you're going to learn something from your punishment. Like for example, you're going to learn that if you do bullying outside of the schools, even if it's out of the school, not only the victims that will get hurt, but you will also get hurt by your own actions. Like for example, it's going to decrease your score at school, you're going to be banned from certain activities and etc. But B, even though at our worst case, students might be afraid to go to schools because of the punishment, but we think that this is okay, right? And this is better, because at the very least, students will not grow up as a bully. But compared to opposition, in their worst case, students will grow up as a bully. That I will explain later on in my argument why then growing up as a bully is going to be very harmful for the students. Then what is the different effects happening in government? Number one, that the different effects will happen because the fact that most of these students' times are spent at school, like every day, every week they go to school, and if they get punishment in a place where they are supposed to feel safe, students will actually learn that their actions must be very harmful and it should be stopped, so they will stop their bullying. But this is why opposition needs to prove two things. First, why then government officials like the policy institutions, for example, are enough to stop bullying outside of school, but B, why parents are enough to actually educate their children in terms of bullying. Next, moving on to my next argument, why then it's very harmful if you let students growing up as a bully, because the fact that bully has a very big effect, like it has a very long-term effect, like fear of public speaking, cannot socialize, growing up as introverts, or even like some people are very traumatized, or even need to seek help for medical help. This is why it's important to stop the bully.
Thank you very much for that fine speech. I would like to remind the other remaining speakers that you should wrap up your speech after the bell knock twice, because after 7 minutes 20 seconds we're not going to jot down anything you say after that, right? Proceeding to the case of opposition benches, I would like to call Deputy Leader of Opposition to close the case from opening opposition. Yeah, the second speaker of the opening opposition.
Okay, so I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. To answer the question of government team, we have to consider that school isn't a law institution, and if they are giving a right to punish the student for their behavior outside of the school, then is it going to be fair for the students? Because unlike other law institution that has a certain law about every criminal action, school has no that kind of rules if the bullying occurs outside the school. And it also didn't clear what kind of punishment that school should be given to the student, because they have no law for it. They may just punish the student only by their previous perspective. and that sounds so inhuman. And we have to also consider that, and we also consider about the side of the victim. If the victim isn't the school student, then there are no more thing that school can do. And I think the thing that we have to highlight in here is school isn't a law institution, so they didn't have any right. They are not the one who should take responsibility if shouldn't do kind of bullying outside the school. The one who should take the responsibility if the government. So that's all for me.
Thank you very much for that fine speech. Now that concludes the opening section of this debate. Now, wait a second. Okay, now we proceed to the closing section of this debate. So we would like to invite the member of government to open the case from closing government. Please state your preferred method of POI.
All right, press. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
My preferred POI method is through the chat box. So just type POI, and I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 2 points of argumentation that I'm going to prove in my speech, and all the rebuttals will be integrated into my argument. So first argumentation. Why do you think that principally the school have right to punish any form of bullying that occurs even outside of the school? So for reason, we think that school have the duty to teach the character. Second reason, we think that the bullying is a repeated behavior that also created by the environment that we have in school. Third reason, we think that fundamentally all acts of the students should be taken care of by their teacher in school. But fourthly, we think that the intention of current students is that they are afraid to do bullying inside of their schools, show the power of school to punish their children. So first reason, why we think that school have the duty to teach character, because it is even included in the curriculum that the current curriculum that we have. For example, they teach the moral values to the children and so on and so forth. So we think when, for example, students do the bullying, mean that their character is particularly low, meaning that it is exactly the fail of the school to like teaching the character in their children. So the way of the school to taking responsibility of their failure of teaching the characters to their children is exactly to punish their students. So it is exactly the reason why we think that school have the responsibility to punish their students. Second reason why we think that bullying is a repeated behavior, that it is not created by a one-day process and so on and so forth. What does it mean? It means that someone who have the intention to bully, it's basically because of two reasons. First reason, because they think that they have power. In this kind of particular power is created by like structural thing that they have in school, and they think that they have power and so on and so forth. And then the school already failed to like identify like these students already being a superpower students that able to like control other students and so forth. Because we think that the bullying is not like the act of single individual that do bullying to another individual. It is most of the time the bullying process is happen not by only one individual, but like 2 or 3 groups of individual or even more, because one individual have the power to control the another individual. Because the school already failed to like identify that one shouldn't could taken control of another individual in schools. We think that the responsibility of the school should be taken by like they punish these kind of particular students in the end of the day. But secondly, we think that the kind of particular bullying it also happened because of supportive environment to do so. For example, like teacher, like just for example, like in school, for example, students do a small kind of bullying, and then it even grows more. It means that the environment, that the protective environment that they currently have in school is not capable enough to protect this kind of particular children, to hinder this kind of particular children to do bullying. Hence why we think that it is important
it is important for the school to do this kind of particular punishment to their children. Thirdly, we think that fundamentally all acts of students should be taken care also by the school. We think that we think that the duty of the school is not only limited to like the school time, not only limited to how it's to the school area and so on and so forth. We think that school also should be responsible to all acts does by their students. For example, like currently, school, for example, have the ability to giving the homework to their children, meaning that those kind of particular homework they done in outside of the school. What does it shows to you? It shows that school also have the power to control the to manage their students, even when, for example, the school time already out, even when, for example, the students are not in the area of their school. It shows that schools also have the responsibility and should also taking care of the student even outside of the school. Or we think that we say that in the current status quo, current students are afraid to do bullying. There's also so many cases that students are afraid to do bullying inside of the school because they're afraid, for example, for giving punishment. So we think that to bigger the harm for the children, to bigger like the risk of the children of doing bullying, to hinder them to do bullying, is that we need to like also protect any act of bullying even outside of the school. So second argumentation, why the mechanism of reporting to police currently, which is the current mechanism that we have, will not work in the are not optimally work. It's also elaborated from the argument from the opening government. So 4 reasons. First, it needs long-term process. Second, the trust that already given to police is particularly low. 3, it's the narrative that most of the time, the one who will win, for example, in the court or in the institutional law process is the one who have power. Fourthly, is that the proof that we have for bullying is particularly low. So for a reason, why do you think that reporting your case of bullying as a victim, for example, when you would like to report your bullying cases to police, it will take a long-term process. And because, for example, you need to like find a witness, you need to find a proof, and so on and so forth to prove like how exactly you are being a victim of bullying. When it takes a lot of time, the intention of individual to report their case of bullying, it will be particularly low because they think that it will just like spending their time, spending their money, and so on and so forth. They should involve a lot of people, and in the end of the day, it will even trigger more. It will even affect their mental health because they will ask repeatedly about the case that they already have. They will ask repeatedly about the bullying cases that they already face. Second reason, we think that the trust that already given to police is particularly low. And this is also integrated to the third point, which is the narrative that most of the time, how the law institutional works is that based on the one who have power. How is that possible? First, we think that like hiring for a good lawyer is require you to have money, to have a lot of money. Like first, it requires you to have a lot of money. But secondly, we think that also you need as individual, when you would like to report a bullying cases, you need a lot of power because. And most of the time, we think that the victims of bullying is the one who does not have power at all. For example, like they are poor, that's why they're being bullied. Or secondly, they are afraid to say something, that's why they're being bullied. So that is exactly why we think that the current mechanism to report to school will not work under the proposal of opposition. But last reason is that the proof is particularly low. We think that it's not a murder cases that have an exact evidence where you could see a dead body and then you think that there's a murder case happen. Bullying is not something like that. Bullying could also be cyberbullying and so on and so forth. While the proof that you could find is particularly low. Hence why the police could not work by the low evidence that they have. Hence why we think that the one who could be taking care of it is the punishment by their school. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that fine speech. Now we proceed to the closing opposition. To open the case from closing opposition, I would like to call member of opposition.
First of all, check if I'm audible.
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, thank you. I'll be starting my speech in.
Please state your preferred method of POI.
You can, if you want to POI me, just unmute yourself, and I will be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. chairs, we believe that it is unfair for the government to boil down the children's development into categorization as narrow as whether or not those children have parents or not. For example, people in slum areas basically usually have mentorship programs and whatnot that is already catered by the government. That is to say that these children are not the responsibility of the school anymore, but also the people around them. And hence, that is why at the current status quo, juvenile detention exists, and people who are already willing to help these children already exist. Now, several responses towards the Prime Minister of the government's side of the house. First of all, the Prime Minister said that schools should be obligated to interview students, and it shouldn't be parents' responsibility under the basis that at the end of the day, the parents of the children already pay their taxes, right? First of all, note that not all taxes go into paying schools. We believe that under this reason, that it is unfair for them to expect that school are solely responsible to basically fix the cases of bullying anyways. Second, some of those funds already go to the juvenile detention center and police forces, and some of them even go into mentorship programs that I have already mentioned before. But at the end of the day, we believe this proves to you that school are not the only one responsible for this, and thus they are not justifiable enough for the government side of the house basically be burdening the school as the one who are solely responsible into fixing this bullying issues, because at the end of the day another non-exclusive method already exists. Second of all, the government side of the house keep bringing why since basically school are obligated to basically give student homework, that they are also obligated to basically control the life of their children, including these cases of bullying. We believe that at the end of the day, their comparison to homework are not able with punishing bullying, since at the end of the day, homeworks are basically easier to manage because at the end of the day, they are already within the curriculum, while punishing bullying basically relies and contingent on finding evidence and summoning school committees and so on and so forth in order to determine whether or not the bullying case actually happened, or whether or not it's basically just some sort of a gaslighting and so on and so forth. At the end of the day, we believe that that governments of the house need also to consider the capabilities of the school to fix the punishing of bullying in the first place, before basically saying that the schools are the only ones who are responsible for fixing bullying cases. Several arguments on our side, right? Comparatively, why are schools not the best option? Panels, we need to know that schools are only affecting individuals' pragmaticality, right? At the end of the day, people who are punished for bullying are basically only getting scoring. They're basically having bias prejudice from their teachers, since they have been included in some cases of bullying, etc., and so on and so forth. And at the end of the day, we believe that this is only going to be decreasing the grades of the students who are affected instead of actually fixing them. Panels, we believe that this is not only for pragmatical benefits, but also the moral responsibility that comes into play into fixing this bullying, for example, by teaching their children the moral ethics and so on and so forth, and how to properly treat their friends. At the end of the day, we believe that why it is not the justification of the school, since the schools are not the only ones who are responsible, who will be meeting these children. These children will basically be spending most of the time not going to school only 8 hours a day, while basically the rest of them are gonna be having towards socializing with their friends, parents, and so on and so forth. And under those bases, right, we believe that this is basically giving the schools unnecessary burden to basically be chasing the students anywhere they go in order to determine whether or not they have been involved in the case of bullying and so on and so forth. And we believe that at the end of the day, since the parents and society are going to be the ones who are responsible for fixing the problems that these kids are having in the first place, at the end of the day, by giving the schools the right to basically punish every bullying cases, it is going to be burdening not only for the schools that are involved in this bullying issues, but also towards the people who are going to be the mentor or the parents of these children. Because at the end of the day, these things are contingent upon the fact that schools are given the right to be punishing them, and hence they basically have the burden to do so, and that the parents can just be complacent at home, can just be doing their things, whatever they want to do, instead of trying to cater towards their children and fix their attitude at home. Now, why is this dangerous then? Because at the end of the day, this is going to be problematic, since this is contingent on since the capabilities of the schools the capabilities of the schools are also necessary at play. Why is this the case then? Because at the end of the day, we can basically see how at schools they cannot sometimes they cannot even fix the problem they're having within their own grounds. We can basically see how teenagers are always involved in sex crimes, for example, or basically having smoking in the bathroom and so on and so forth. And the school doesn't necessarily have any ground to provide enough justification for them to prove the problem that is already existing. This is basically proof to you that they cannot be exclusively given the right to be fixing the problems that is happening, that is bullying, because at the end of the day they cannot even fix problems within their own grounds. And at the end of the day, we believe that it is necessary for us to provide them with enough resources and timing to basically start fixing these problems that is happening inside of them first, before basically giving them the right and the burdens to fix problems that is happening outside of the realm of the school. Second of all, onto the point of schools capabilities, right? We believe that the current status quo teachers are underpaid. Basically, just imagine being a teacher who is only getting paid for 50,000 for a rupiah for every hour you would do teaching, and on top of that, you will have to basically consider your transportation, buying kids or buying meals for your kids, and so on and so forth. Imagine then, on top of that, you're going to have to monitor every single problem that your students are having outside of the school and outside of the work hours that you're provided by the government. Notice then that even after being paid basically like this, teachers are still lacking, right? Now notice what is going to be happening once they are basically given more burden to start trying to punish children, trying to punish crimes that children are doing outside of their realm of the authorities. Now, notice that teachers already have too many things to do. Not only they have to teach, they're basically wage workers, and now they also have to worry about parents' children. We believe this is also not justifiable for the government side of the house to be burdening only the schools, but they should also try to cater towards the idea that parents are also responsible for their own children, and we believe that it is unfair for the teachers since they have to do extra work to stop bullying on top of teaching, and most likely to help around raising their own children, as basically a punishment for the parents' inability to start raising their own children properly.
Time is up. Okay, thank you very much for that fine speech. Now, to conclude the case from closing government, I would like to call government wave.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, so you guys may, if you want to POI, you may unmute your mic and say POI. So I'm gonna start my speech in 3, 2, 1. We closing government have our stance that school have, we are going to put all of the authorities to schools to punish the children that do bullies outside of school. Notice, well, panels notice that bullies cases are not all severe. There are several levels of bully cases. There are some that are so severe that it affects the victim's mentality and also physically, but also there are also bullies cases where it's also just do verbally damage towards its victim, which is mostly those cases go unnoticed. That's why we on our side we are going to explain to you how then these kind of cases are going to be catered by schools, and schools should actually have the authorities to cater the bullying cases. So before moving on, I would like to go through several rebuttals towards the closing opposition, saying first of all, they are giving you a mechanism that the status quo is already enough, that the government already provide you mentorship program, but they never explain to you how then this mentorship program can cater these bullying cases in the status quo, that there are already people who are willing to help these abused children or abused bullying victim, but then they never explain to you why then this method are effective. But we are going to engage to that and say that at the end of the day, if there is government providing any method for these bullying cases, at the end of the day, it only to official authorities such as police and stuff, right? But we are going to prove to you why then it's not effective. Well, first of all, Why then, Tori has explained to you why official authorities such as police are not effective, because let's analyze, right? Why most bullying happens outside of school? Because these the children does not, they feel free outside of school. They do not have any authorities over them, such as in school, they have their teachers to punish them when they do this kind of bullying, right? But outside of school, there is no one to watch them. There is no one to watch over them. That's why they feel free outside of school and they do bullying outside of school, right? That shows to you how weak these police authorities or official authorities over these children, over these bullies. And secondly, Torex already explained to you why these official authorities only process cases that has strong evidence, such as murder. You see the dead bodies, right? There is an actual casualties in there. But compared to bullying, like I've said, bullying has several severe cases, right? There are the worst case scenario. There are bullying that includes physical casualties, but also there are bullying that happens verbally, right? But these kinds of verbal bullying, are you sure that police are going to proceed towards that case? Because there is no enough evidence for those kinds of bullying cases, right? That's why we say that schools are better to cater that. And this also engaged towards their point, saying that this will be an unnecessary burden for school. Why then? School has a capacity over like maybe 1,000 students, right? Like how many burden, how many bullying cases that can happen over 1,000 students, comparing when police have over 1,000 other more malicious cases, more menace cases, right? To be proceed with the case rather than bullying cases, right? That's why we say, and also school have a moral responsibility over their children. Like Tori have already said to you, that character development happens not only in school but also happens outside of school. The school has the authority to actually monitor their students' character development, right? Like bullies happens because they know they have power over their victim, right? That's why school needs to teach their students that this kind of bullies, that this kind of activities should be punished, right? And also, why then we say school? Why then school by deterring this, that school have authority over them, and why we said that it's effective to deter? Why? Because school, first of all, school is an official institution that actually have law power over them, right? And also school also have a right counselor or psychologist or their teacher or counseling to understand their student more, right? Because these students are minors. Even if they're not minors, this kind of counselor has already been equipped with their ways to punish their students in a more appropriate way, because these students actually need guiding by adults, which are not which sometimes most students do not have those privilege, like have a loving family to cater towards those needs. That's why we say that school actually provide to you this. And secondly, why also it's not effective for this for this kind of cases to be handled over their parents. Like the opposition might say that parents have moral responsibility over their children outside of school, right? But we say that not all students have those kinds of families. And also, why then we say families or family of the victim does not solve the problem? Why? First, if the family of the bullies, they are most likely are biased towards their children, thus they will not actually directly punish their children because they are biased by their love for the children. Secondly, if the family of the victim wants to sue the bullies, at the end of the day, they do not have authority over those bullies. They do not have law power over to punish those bullies. And even if they want to sue those bullies, at the end of the day, it's then back towards the official authorities, which I've already explained to you why official authorities have failed those bullying cases that happens in outside of school. That's why we say that's why we say school actually have the right method and has the right to cater these bullying cases. Because of those reasons, we are so proud to propose.
Thank you very much for that fine speech. Okay, and now we proceed to the last speaker, the opposition whip, to wrap up this debate.
Okay, first of all, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible, and please state your preferred method of POI.
Yeah, my POI preference is to unmute yourself.
Okay.
I'm going to start my speech at 3, 2. In order to win this debate is to prove why schools shouldn't carry the much burden and how at the end of the day school will not be effective and cater and fix the problem anyway. We prove to you since how my first speaker explaining how the correlation why the time that a student spend in school and outside the school is much more have a lot of difference. Why the argument coming from OG and closing government is not effective and not true anyway. Jump to my burden of proof. First of all, why give them the right will give them unnecessary burden? First of all, we said that the time that students spend in school is less than the outside school. So like it is already clear that the moment should be the one cater the bully case outside the school that coming from the student wouldn't be effective because it is already outside a school's field anyway. So like the moment they do that, it will give much more burden for the teacher itself. Secondly, we said that the teacher itself is already underpaid, ladies and gentlemen. We said that the teacher itself is underpaid, and what coming if the teacher is underpaid? We said that it is a very poor teacher because the teacher probably will be more overworked than they should. And secondly, we said the teacher won't work effectively anyway because first of all, they need to teach their student in school, and they still need to investigate the case of the case bully outside the school. And at the end of the day, they still have others' life outside the teachers. And we said that the academic civics are having other responsibility outside their job at school. We said that some of them are parents. So then, when they overwork to investigate this bully case, we said that it will affect their stamina as the parents or as their other job itself. And secondly, why it will not effective and lead to even worse case when the moment we give the right for schools to punish their student with who occurs bully case outside the school. We said that comparatively, student and the teachers, student is much more bigger. Student is much more number rather than the teacher. So at the end of the day, the teacher will not able to watch all their students and investigate the case, especially if the field is widening into outside the school. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to aware that the status quo that opening government bring is that the bully case bullying is so much underestimated. So the moment that we are going to give the authority to the school to punish any form bullies case outside the school, we said it will not be effective because it's better to school focus at the case at the bully case that happened inside the school itself. And secondly, so we said that school will have too much burden. So at the end of the day, it's either the investigate will not be effective, which could lead to misjudgment, and secondly, there will not be a good investigate anyway. And we said that students should not get punished. Students should not get punished or get C in their grade if they do such bullying. So like you could not get C because you could not get C at your math just because you do bullying. The question that government should answer is like, at what subject they will get C if they do such bullying, and they even if they will get punished like scores, it means that they will have more time to do the bullying outside the school. At the end of the day, it will jeopardize the status quo and worsening the status quo. And we said that punish. Even if they say punish is form of lesson, we said that yes, it is a lesson, but then there's a lot of people who can do the punishment itself. And what opening position bring to the table, I think they don't really bring much, because they said school is not law institution, therefore it's not the responsibility of school. But we said that even if it is our responsibility, we said that it's not full, because at the end of the day, school is still have the responsibility, but not full responsibility. We only need to cater the bully case inside the school. And what closing government keeps saying that how students have tendency to operate to do the bully inside the school because they will get punishment. We said that this is not true, because first of all, they will still get punishment anyway, coming from the social life, such like peer group and anti-bully movement. They will get cancelled anyway. Secondly, even if they don't, we said that there's still law institution, even if closing government agree that the bureaucracy is hard because they need to prove and etc. We said that the school itself will, if the school itself do the investigation, they will still do a hard investigation anyway. What I see that coming from closing government and opening government, they seem like claiming that the moment school do investigate, they will not need proof like pictures or something like that. We said that this is also framed that school is not capable to do the investigate because they need to serve a photo and such thing and whatnot. And what closing government mentioned about my first speaker, how mentorship could fix the status quo. They said, we said that of course it will fix the status quo, because we aware that we don't there are some people out there who don't get privilege, but government gives such openness mentorship. Of course, this will give much help, because they will go get program as how their parents should give, but which they don't get because they don't have parents or they have such like problems. And secondly, what opening government say that bully is underestimated. Yes, we aware about that. And secondly, they said parents are not responsible, so school should take the responsibility. First of all, we said it is not true, because it doesn't justify for school to take the burden if the parents will not do that. And even if they said not everyone get the privilege, because at the end of the day, as my first speaker, they said there is still program that coming from the government. And fourth, they said that a school is where students should run. We said that there is two kind of education: formal education and moral education. We said that the school is the form where the people should lean for formal education. The moral education should coming from the family and other agents. So like we said that outside of the school, the student has the ability to choose their circle, so that the student itself has the choice. Unlike in school, they cannot really change it. That's the status quo that we aware. Therefore, we say that in outside the school, the student has the ability to choose. So like if it toxic, then just leave it. Therefore, what we already give best scenarios, people will be more aware that they the one who have the responsibility. People will get their own children. And our work is that the manage to our work is that even if the management do the responsibility, the bully will get the punishment anyway.
Okay, thank you very much for that fine speech. Right, so that's so the speech from opposition whip concluded this debate. So a round of applause for all 8 speakers who have delivered such amazing speech. So